Master plan or disaster plan for Colchester? That is the question. Let's take a quick look at a small snippet from the council's promotional video.
We want it to be active, exciting, and viable for the next generation. The plan is full of big ideas, like how to make the most of our amazing Roman wall, the oldest in Britain. It includes transforming Vineyard Gate, the former bus station, and other sites for new homes, because people living in the centre keep shops and businesses busy. There are ideas to make it easier to get in and out by foot, cycle, bus and car to help our businesses grow and thrive here.
Trouble is, the cartoon doesn't really give you a proper feel for it. So that means wading through the master plan document, and those that have done it, like Sir Bob Russell, say it takes 6 hours. The master plan was immediately nicknamed the disaster plan in the newspaper by local residents. So I don't have an opinion on the master plan. I'm not going to spend 6 hours of my life studying it to get one. So it could be the best thing since sliced bread for all I know, or the members of the public might be absolutely spot on. So here's what some of the public and Sir Bob himself had to say.
Developing it really is essential to the plan. Then could a portion be retained as a specific car park for the vulnerable and for those with mobility issues?
Now, there are a few several worthy aims in this document, but Colchester is not the same as Amsterdam or London.
This gentleman also made some predictions. Turns out he's quite psychic. I'll play that later on.
That cost £130,000. I haven't yet found out how much this one has cost in the 10 months. What I have established is that this report is very anti-car. There's something like 80 references to cycles and 20 to cars. And cycles are all positive and cars are all negative. Bearing in mind that those who come into Colchester, 65%, these are council figures, not mine, 65% come in by car and 4.9% come in by bike. Tanya Car Park and Vineyard Street, if you were to shut those two, as the master plan is forward, that's a loss of revenue of £820,000.
I understand the temptation to take the town deal and levelling up money, especially in these times of wildly inadequate funding from central government, but there are so many strings attached that the whole plan is in danger of creating a stupendously exorbitant, hideous mess. By following the current zeitgeist of reclaiming the roads, in an ill-planned attempt to tick the disability access, bicycle access, discouraging car use boxes, you will ensure this area of our city is less efficient for all of us. We'll end up with traffic chaos, a soulless confusion of mixed hard surfacing, unused seating areas and silly sad trees in square planters. Hardly a memorable gateway to the city of Colchester. Your citizens deserve a plan which is intelligent, appropriate and truly inclusive. This plan is none of these. Don't confuse action with progress.
On cycling, I am getting tired of hearing some of the anti-cycling rhetoric.
Well, what's also rather tiring is when you cannot raise a concern these days without someone telling you you're an anti-something or other. Would this be rhetoric if it was your concerns, Councillor Laws, or is it only other people's that are rhetoric? Does everything have to be a battle like this? Can you not listen to people's concerns and address them? So I get a lot of emails and comments from people. So let me try and voice you their concerns in a way which I hope you will listen to. People aren't anti-cycling. What they are anti is having cycle lanes shoehorned in to places where they just don't fit and having this happen at the expense of other road users. That is what people are against. And what is very concerning, as members of the public have expressed to you, is you are getting funding with so many strings attached. They are controlling what you do. What people would prefer is if we sit down and have a master plan drawn up and we really put our heads together and think, okay, what would make Colchester really, really good? What improvements do we need to make? And then go off and secure funding to try and make as much of that happen as possible. But doing it the other way round, with active travel funding, levelling up funding, and all these strings attached funding where you have to do things their way, you're being steered by groups that have very specific agendas that we haven't been asked properly if we agree with.
The reality is that the numbers of cycling in Colchester is low because we don't have the infrastructure to facilitate safe cycling. And our children have a right to cycle safely to school. We shouldn't just be encouraging it, we need to be enabling it. And that's why key arterial routes, east, west, north, south, should be delivered.
Now, cycle lanes do make cycling safer, but they don't make it safe, not unless you do them in a very specific way. Having lived in both Cambridge and Holland, I have a fair bit of experience with this. A lot of Cambridge is brilliant to cycle around, but even with those cycle lanes, with buses cutting across to get into the bus stop and cars overtaking, I used to cycle on their very wide pavements because it was safer than the cycle lanes. The only time cycle lanes are really safe is when they are completely separated from other road users, including pedestrians. Certainly in the area of Holland I was living in, they oftentimes had the cycle lanes completely separated from the road, often next to dikes. So if you did come off your bicycle, at least you'd have a nice soft landing, depending on the size of the dike, obviously.
And if we had done this in the 1970s, when some of the ex-politicians who are complaining about this today were actually politicians, like they did in the Netherlands, we wouldn't be having these conversations. In Utrecht today, half the residents make a cycle journey every day. And they don't do it with a ritual high vis and a hard hat because it's safe. It's just factored into their culture. I support safe cycling infrastructure that gives people the choice, because that's the key word here, choice.
And yes, you are right. It should have been thought about in the 70s, but it wasn't. Design is all about form and function. And if you do things after the effect, it's very difficult to put them in properly. If you can get cycle lanes in without any detriment to the existing traffic, fantastic, go for it. It would be wonderful to cycle. But we may have to accept that Colchester is Colchester. It isn't Utrecht. It hasn't been designed properly from its conception, which is a shame.
Cycling campaign, please don't water that down. If the Colchester cycling campaign are not happy with the master plan, then I'm not happy. I want cycle routes that go everywhere, end to end. I don't want them broken up. I want them going both ways down the high street. Let's take it further. Why don't we pedestrianise the high street? Buses as well, cyclists. I would take it even further. I would look at Southway, look at Balkan Hill. I would completely delete those roads and green them over and turn them into parks. Nice parks at Bridge, St John's Greens to the town centre. I don't think roads like that belong in a modern city. You wouldn't see them like that they're getting rid of them in places like Vancouver and all the other progressive cities around the world. And be ambitious. You know, we're a city of culture. We're the best place in Essex. We're better than anything in Suffolk. We don't want to be dull like Chelmsford. Thank you very much.
So I'm all for people being as creative as they like, as long as these things are stress tested before they are built, i.e. they are put through computer modelling with the traffic data, so you can see how any roads you shut off, where is that traffic going to go? What's going to happen? Because there are always unintended consequences. And there is so much idealism within that council, and there doesn't seem to be as grounded in realism, that they come up with all these wonderful ideas, but the reality is they fall flat on their face because they are not functional. And that, I think, is what people as a whole are very, very concerned about.
To conclude, what does the master plan achieve? It adds value to the development process and sets out explicit expectations for developers. It provides a shared vision for our city and a basis for future grant bids.
Just a shame it's not shared by actual local people rather than just the council and the architects. But anyway, interesting about the grants that they get more if they do this. Makes you wonder what else is coming down the pipeline for us. So, I don't have an opinion. It might be fantastic. But the way you are going about it does not instill confidence, and neither does your past performance. Over the years, a lot of things in Colchester undeniably have been, how should we put it, fluffed up. From roads to infrastructure to vanity projects with things like First Sight and getting rid of the very functional, okay, it was ugly, but the very functional bus station. So we have instead what they call dispersed bus stops, which basically means good luck finding the right bus stop for your bus. To have a city the size of Colchester with no bus station is a bone of contention that is not going away. In fact, there's a member of the public that emails me on a near daily basis about this, an architect who is very upset by all of this. I had 5 emails on the subject yesterday, long emails, of which I do not have time to go through the sheer amount of information in each email. I just don't. For that reason alone, will you please sort out the bus station? And that was a project that none of you listened to. You were so keen to get the First Sight Visual Arts Gallery up and running that you completely ignored all the objections.
That said, I didn't object to it.
I actually remember being quite excited about the prospect of the First Sight Gallery because at the time I was into designing very modern gardens. My taste have changed completely now. I'm into wildflowers and no concrete. But anyway, at the time, the thought of something really contemporary and amazing in Colchester was very exciting. When I finally did get to visit First Sight, it was a little bit of a shock to the system because there was a bit of a form versus function issue. Those amazing curved walls were so curved that guess what, the one thing that they weren't really any good for? Yes, that would have been hanging artwork. Now I know art comes in many forms, but I am rather old school. I do like to see canvases hung up on a wall, preferably at an angle I can see them at. First Sight wasn't exactly a hit with local people having lost their bus station, the 28 million that was spent on it, and the fact you couldn't actually hang any pictures on the main wall of the gallery didn't go down well. Local people nicknamed it the Golden Banana. Even the Guardian newspaper criticised the sloping wall design. The Daily Telegraph criticised the expense of the project
And highlighted the concerns that more than half of the 147,000 visitors only went in to use the lavatory.
Another firm favourite with local residents are the parklets that have been installed up and down the high street. Parklet, as the name suggests, are miniature parks. Here's one in Spain, near where I used to live. But in England, they look a little different. Here's how they look in London, and here's how they look in Colchester. Now, I don't care how many times you've been bashed in the brain falling off your bicycle, that is not a miniature park. It's a bench. It doesn't instill trust if you cannot tell the difference between street furniture and a miniature park. And then there's the art in the high street. I always like looking at street art. I've seen a lot in my travels, but I've certainly not seen any like we have in Colchester. Now, they've gone to great effort to make this look like plastic, but apparently it is bronze. Still, we should all be thankful that the council's finances are so thoroughly fluffed up. Otherwise, we might have ended up with Tracy Emin's underwear dotted down the high street and an unmade bed in one of those parklets. So with all of this, it's not surprising that the trust isn't there from local residents. So that's down to you, Colchester Council, to fix. And you can remedy this very easily by producing a video tour from the CAD designs that you've got so that people can see exactly what you've got in mind. And it's such a shame this hasn't been done with local architects' input.
And if you really want to sway public opinion your way, one might be to persuade Essex County Council to fill in the potholes when they do all those cycle lanes.
So the people of Colchester are not convinced that your plans are going to ease congestions. They are very sceptical of your rapid transit system. In fact, the main concern is it's going to be more of a rapid inferno system. I do hope Colchester are not still planning to go ahead with the electric buses, not only for the pollution, mining the lithium and the child slave labour for the cobalt causes, but also the habit they have of catching fire. These are not the environmentally friendly solutions they are sold as.
And likewise with your beloved electric bikes and scooters. Again, another thing with unintended consequences that people don't like.
So the master plan may well be masterful. Who knows? That's the problem. We don't know. So you do need to do these computer models and really give people a proper guided tour. You also need to do the traffic flow models to make sure those unintended consequences that will come as a result of you pedestrianizing everywhere, and no matter how tiresome you find it, it does help if you take into account people's concerns. People are fully on board with safe cycling. What they don't want is their car journeys being made worse. It's that simple. People are sick to death of the fluff-ups that have already happened, and we don't want you to fluff it up further. Especially with your thoroughly fluffed-up finances, you can't afford to, and neither can we.
And I must say, I would instead say that the level of representations received probably reflects the fact that the silent majority are very happy with the master plan.
Well, that's one way to view it. Another way might be that the silent majority spend so much of their lives trapped in traffic that they haven't actually had time to fully study it, and haven't a clue what you're going to do, which is why they've stayed silent.
So what we have on this screen now is several of the squares, public squares, that are going to be enhanced or improved. The Sir Isaac's Walk and Short Wide Street made curbless or flat, so that improves accessibility and safety, which is being funded under the Levelling Up Fund. will just enhance that whole area, make it nice and make it work as a route.
So, did they vote it through? Well, let me pass you over to that psychic member of the public. This is what he said at the beginning of the meeting, and this is exactly what happened.
I predict how this evening will pan out. You won't and haven't got the time to pick over and argue any detail. We'll hear the usual comments like, it's an impressive report, congratulations all involved. There won't be any material changes, adoption agreed. And after all the fanfare, nodding it through tonight doesn't really do justice to this, does it?
So leave your comments below as to what you think of this master plan, or is it a disaster plan? Until next time, take care.